Hello everyone, this is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto became the victim of Jiraiya and Tsunade's experiment and suddenly attracted Temari, Tenten, Mei Terumi and Samui, Part 2. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. Temari caught Naruto in her arms before he fell to the ground. When she first saw him dash into the village, her first thought was to beat the crap out of him, but then she saw how terrified and tired he looked, so she decided to let him be for now. She saw the relief on his face before he lost consciousness and was happy at the fact that he felt comfortable around her. She completely forgot about the fact that there was supposed to be a group of people coming and was about to leave when a total of 5 girls skidded into view. "Give Naruto-kun to me now," they all said in unison. Then, glaring at each other, shouted, "He's mine," or, "Leave him alone," and similar comments at each other. Soon the swearing and shouting turned into punches and kicks, biting and scratching. Temari, who was shocked at their behavior, said, "What the hell is all this about?" To Neji, Sasuke and Sakura, who had just arrived on a large toad with Jiraiya. Jiraiya grinned mischievously. "Well, you see, I set up a contest that whoever could catch Naruto before he reaches the village will get to share a room with Naruto during our short stay," he said, looking at Hinata, who was pulling Ino's hair in an un-Hinata-ish way. "What?" said Temari, confused, tightening her hold on Naruto like he was her firstborn son. "Yep," said Jiraiya happily. "But since he ran so hard, no one caught him, so he'll have to stay with all of them at once." While Temari was still trying to absorb the information, Sasuke was watching the 5 girls' half-assed fighting with distaste and smirked when Neji received a punch in the face from Hinata when he tried to pry her off Ino. Many villagers, which were mostly males, had come to watch the fighting and soon were cheering them on, wanting to see clothes ripped off. Then suddenly the sand under the girls' feet rose up and trapped the 5 girls easily, pulling them apart. "What's going on?" said Gaara tonelessly, appearing next to Sasuke from who knows where. Sasuke jumped and almost fell on his butt, but caught himself just in time because he was too cool to do so. He hadn't forgotten how easily Gaara had beaten the shit out of him the last time they met. Gaara looked at Temari, who had Naruto in her arms. "Ah, so you snagged Naruto already. Good. Since we leave tomorrow and we have 4 extra guests, Naruto will stay in your room while the rest cram into the room that I prepared for the 2 green weirdos that didn't turn up," he said, or rather commanded in that same toneless voice. "What?" cried the girls who were trapped in the sand. "No fair. Me want to be a room with Naruto-kun," shouted Tenten, who was struggling trying to get out of the sand. Temari couldn't resist. She so wanted to annoy them, and since they were currently trapped in sand, they can't do a thing to stop her. She smirked and started to cuddle Naruto like he was a teddy bear, which were making the girls extremely jealous. Then they gasped as she planted a kiss on his cheek, and then slowly proceeded to kiss him on the lips when Naruto woke up. "Hi, Temari," he mumbled, oblivious to the fact that Temari's face was just a few inches away from his. Temari jumped and lost her balance. She fell backwards, and since Naruto was being held by her, he fell too. Temari managed to flip Naruto so he would hit the ground, or rather sand, first, and she landed on top of him. "Ouch. Why did I land in the sand first?" mumbled Naruto, annoyed as he tried to sit up but found that he couldn't move because Temari was on top of him. Temari sniggered and held on tightly, not letting Naruto get off. "Get off me, Temari, you're heavy," said Naruto, but he regretted it at once when he saw that Temari's eyes had suddenly turned fiery red and she started clenching her fists dangerously. "Are you calling me fat?" asked Temari in a very threatening voice. Naruto gulped. Of course not. You're not heavy at all. It's just that you are on top of me and I need to get up." He managed to stutter out the words. Temari's fury seemed to vanish in an instant and she got off Naruto, pulling him up too by his arm. Thanks, said Naruto, and he stretched, but since he was so drained from all the running in the hot desert, he lost his balance easily and fell into Tamari, who caught him and held onto him tightly, saying, "You okay?" In a worried tone. "Yeah, I feel like a bowl of ramen," he said stupidly, still in Tamari's arms. Tamari giggled at his stupid comment and helped him stand again, but Naruto lost balance again and Tamari had to catch him again, not that she minded getting to hold Naruto in her arms. Sighing, she said, "Seems that you're drained of chakra. You must have been running very hard away from those girls," while ruffling his hair, which was one of the many things she liked to do to Naruto. "Yeah," mumbled Naruto, unaware of what the soft pillow he was resting his face against was as he fell asleep, breathing in Temari's sweet scent. Gaara was a bit impatient because the girls looked very furious in his sand prison and was already cracking while Tamari was having fun with Naruto's hair. "Okay, let's get to your rooms. Tamari, drag Naruto to your room and try not to rape him before dinner," he said hastily, and he walked off towards the cage's tower, lifting the 5 furious girls into the air in front of him. Tamari motioned to Jiraiya and the others to follow, and she hoisted Naruto onto an armored toad Jiraiya summoned, and they set off, with Neji rubbing his red nose and the frog complaining about dehydration. About 10 minutes of walking later, they arrived at their resting place and Tamari dragged Naruto into her room, murmuring, "Looks like we'll have to share a bed," loud enough for the 5 trapped girls to hear before closing the door, smirking. Gaara hastily threw the 5 furious girls into their rooms and blocked the doors with sand before they can damage anything outside. "Dinner's at 7 in the room through that door," he said, pointing at a big green door before disappearing to watch some TV. Sasuke just stood there looking bored while Jiraiya chuckled evilly as he knocked on Temari's door. "Yes," said Tamari, opening the door. Jiraiya saw that Naruto was dumped on the floor next to a futon which was purple with lots of green froggies. "Naruto's pack is here and remind him to take a shower when he wakes up," said Jiraiya, handing her an orange backpack. "Anyway, play safe," he said, putting a small black box on top of the bag before disappearing with a poof sound and some smoke. Tamari looked at the black box curiously and closed the door, leaving Sasuke, Neji and Sakura, the ones who have a bit of sanity left in their head, alone again. "Well, let's get to our rooms and get some rest," said Sasuke, and the other 2 nodded and went to their rooms. Sasuke picked up his bag and walked past Temari's room to get to his own. He heard some weird ripping noises in Naruto's moans of "more" and "don't stop." He quickly opened the door of his own room and went inside, bolting the door shut, blocking Naruto's moans. "Stupid dope dreaming again," muttered Sasuke, putting his bag in a corner. "But why is there ripping noises? He can't be doing it with Tamari, can he? Nah, he's too dumb to even know what it is called." He smirked, remembering something that happened a few weeks ago at a mission. Flashback. They were at their usual meeting place waiting for Kakashi to arrive. "Sasuke-kun, what's it like to have?" asked Sakura, trying to sound as tempting as possible. Sasuke looked at her, bored. "Even though I went to Orochimaru and spent a lot of time there, I haven't been forced to breed the Sharingan for him, nor had with any other people, so I don't know," he answered dully. "Do want to find out sometime. I am really curious how it feels like and want to try it," she said lustfully. "No," said Sasuke flatly, looking away. "Hey, I can have with you if you want, Sakura-chan. I tried it before and it is really fun. I can let you ride me all day long," he said happily before being punched into air by Sakura, who shouted, "Pervert." Naruto landed with a small crash a few meters from Sasuke, who was gaping at Naruto for being so bold. He had thought Naruto didn't even know what having meant. "What was that about?" said Naruto, rubbing his sore cheek. "It's not like it's bad or anything. I do it all the time with small kids when I was traveling with Ero Sennin." Sasuke and Sakura were wide-eyed and looked positively horrified at what their stupid teammate had just said. Why you did that to small kids?" Sakura exclaimed, backing off slightly. "Yep. I have lots of experience and can prevent you from sliding off while riding me, he said in a saintly voice very proudly. Then there was a loud puff of smoke that announced their teacher's arrival. Yo, said Kakashi as he appeared before Sasuke and Sakura. He then saw the looks of utter horror on their faces as they stared at Naruto, who was caressing his cheek. What's up? Did Naruto do something stupid again? He said, putting away his precious Ika paradise, which is an extremely rare sight. Seeing that Sakura couldn't seem to speak, he motioned to Sasuke to be the one to tell him. But even his voice shook slightly as he tried to remain calm. Well, Sakura asked me if I'd like to have with her. He was cut off by Kakashi, who said, and you accepted, but just when you pinned Sakura against a pine tree in the beach and started ripping her clothes off. Sasuke tried to interrupt, but Kakashi ripped out his book again and opened it, continuing. But then Naruto saw you and shoved a kunai with a wrapped explosive note up your behind and blew you up because he was jealous. Just like in the book. He finished. Before receiving a whack from Sasuke, Sakura was still standing there looking dumbstruck at Naruto. There are no beaches around here and I refused to do it with her, said Sasuke loudly before continuing his explanation. After I said no to Sakura, Naruto offered to do it with her. He was interrupted by Kakashi again, who said, he did what? With wide eyes. That's not all, said Sasuke, shuddering. He said he had done it a lot of times before with small kids, and Sasuke didn't get to say another word because Kakashi had zipped off, pinned Naruto to a tree and tied him up. Is it true that you had with smaller kids? He asked Naruto seriously. Naruto nodded, asking, why did you tie me up, sensei? Did I do something wrong? His eyes widened in horror. You found out that it was me who switched all your music CDs with CDs of Lee singing. You did, said Kakashi questioningly. But my CDs sounded fine and were normal. Naruto thought for a moment. Oh, he said. No wonder my CDs sounded like Lee singing. I must have changed them with my CDs by mistake. Kakashi's sweat dropped, but decided not to comment on that matter, continuing instead on the current problem. Naruto, you know that you are underage and shouldn't have, especially with kids who don't know what they're doing. Naruto looked confused. Why is having not good for underage people like me? It's really fun, and I hear that the more you are like a horse, the better people enjoy it. Kakashi looked a bit shocked at the information, but continued, even so, a 15-year-old boy shouldn't do this just yet. You could get AIDS and infect the people you have with it too. You might be big, but still. Naruto interrupted him. I'm already very big and can do it smoothly. Here, let me show you. He cut himself from the tree with a kunai and prepared to do whatever he is doing. Sakura snapped to her senses and clapped her hands over her eyes and backed off a bit, but Naruto said, I'll need you to help Sakura-chan, and ran over. Sakura cried, no, but Naruto leapt on her, pinning her to the ground. Kakashi was about to intervene when Naruto started forming hand seals. Henge no jutsu. He shouted and turned into a horse, said Sasuke, Sakura and Kakashi together. The horse was red and was indeed very big. Sakura-chan, get on and I'll show you, said Naruto, which was the horse. She got on and Naruto started trotting around with Sakura on his back. A few minutes later, Naruto was back in human form again and he was looking smugly at the others. See, I could turn into a big horse and Sakura-chan didn't fall once. She could ride me all day and it will still be the same. The others stared at him for a moment, before Kakashi said uncertainly, Naruto, do you know what have W means? Naruto looked at him shocked. Of course I do. Who wouldn't know what having is? People talk about it all the time. He said, looking at Kakashi as if he was mad. Then why did you show? Naruto talked over him. It means riding a horse, of course. They think that saying, riding a horse, is too troublesome, so they call it having. Looks of understanding dawned upon Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke's faces. Naruto wasn't he was a complete dumb who doesn't know one bit about how he sounded like a complete psycho when he talked about having, without knowing what he was talking about. Naruto, said Kakashi slowly. Yes, sensei, said Naruto. You need the talk right now, and your teammates are helping me explain this too, he said seriously. What's that? Asked Naruto, and Sasuke fell over while Sakura blushed a deep shade of red. Shouldn't someone else tell him about that? Sakura asked nervously, like his pa. Then she remembered that Naruto had no parents, and stopped at once because she saw a flicker of sadness in Naruto's eyes at the reminder that he had no one he could call mother or father. We're his teammates and have a responsibility to teach each other things, so Naruto would understand them as well as us, said Kakashi seriously. So that afternoon the mission was cancelled and Team 7 dragged Naruto to a private place to give him the talk. End flashback. Sasuke smirked again at the memory of the incident. Naruto was blushing red by the end of it and was extremely shocked at the fact of what having was. Sasuke took out some fresh clothes and set off to the bathhouse to take a bath. Inside Temari's room, Temari was busy ripping off the strangely cloth-like three-layered wrapper off the black box Jiraiya gave her when she heard Naruto moaning. She walked over to him and sat down, looking at his face curiously and noticing how he was drooling slightly. She blushed a deep shade of red when she caught words like, want, more, and, don't, stop, it, giving her mental images of Naruto under her, begging her to. She shook the thought out of her mind. She leaned closer, curious at what he was doing in his dream, though she thought she had a pretty good idea of what he was doing in his dream, and wanted to know who he was dreaming of. Hoping that she was the one he was dreaming of, her heart sank when she heard the name, Ayame, and tears formed in her eyes. She was about to wake him up forcibly and confess her love to him when she heard him mumble, ramen, make, more, ramen, don't, stop, want, more, ramen. She smiled and whipped the tears out of her eyes, thinking why she got so emotional where Naruto was concerned. She then remembered about the small black box and took out a kunai. She cut off the wrapping, and looked at the cover. It read, condoms for the energetic, extra durable and comes in different flavors. Temari blushed again and stuffed the black box out of sight. She looked over at Naruto and saw him stirring. Awake yet, you sleepy head, she said, giggling slightly as Naruto sat up, looking at her with unfocused eyes. Then, without warning, Temari. He shouted happily and flung his arms around Temari's waist, pulling her into a tight hug, making the said girl blush deeper than before. Good to see you, Temari. I missed you so much, he said happily, showing no signs of wanting to let go of her. Temari didn't mind though. She liked his hugs, they made her feel warm and aroused inside. Did she even have to mention that Naruto was very cuddly too? She breathed in the smell of his hair, noticing that there was a strange but nice smell. It was very nice, and she tightened her arms around him, getting a weird feeling. Then she remembered what Jiraiya said. Reluctantly, she broke the hug and said, Naruto, Jiraiya told you to take a shower when you wake up. Naruto nodded, and was about to ask something, but Temari answered before he even asked. Yes, you can. And I'm coming with you too because there is lots of catching up to do. Naruto nodded and they grabbed some fresh clothes. Naruto grabbed Jiraiya's special shampoo, and set off to the private hot springs. Gaara just got fired by the council, but Baki let me have the hot springs to myself anyway, so consider yourself lucky that you didn't have to go to the bathhouses with that pervert, said Temari. What? Gaara got fired? Said Naruto in disbelief. Yep, but we're going to stay at Konoha, so I'll get to see you more often, so that's not too bad, is it? Replied Temari, who realized what she just said and blushed a bit. Naruto wanted to ask why he was fired but stopped at a stern look from Temari. They arrived at the hot springs and went to the showers. They took a quick shower, separately, and went into the hot springs. Like last time, they were back to back and were talking about the stuff that happened since the last time they met. This feels so comfortable, said Naruto lazily, leaning against Temari's back, blushing a bit at the nice feeling he got. Tamari too was enjoying the feeling and was blushing even harder than Naruto because unlike Naruto, she had peeked a few times and saw a good deal of flesh. Then without warning, Naruto turned her around and pressed her into him, so that they were chest to chest. Tamari blushed so red that she looked like a tomato with blonde hair. Wah, was all she could say because she was lost in the feeling. She didn't notice Naruto grab a large towel from the edge of the spring and wrapped it around themselves, saying, "Sorry, I'll explain later, but we have to get covered up and get out and dress now." She only nodded and they got up, with difficulty because they were wrapped together, and went to the changing rooms. They dressed quickly and then Tamari asked, "Why did you know?" Shyly, still very red. Naruto, who was equally red, said, "I sensed one of Ero Sennin's tracking toads nearby and it was communicating to Ero Sennin. We had to get out quickly because Ero Sennin was approaching a high speed and I didn't have time to warn you. Sorry that I peeked." Tamari felt even more embarrassed. "It's all right, I sort of peeked too," she mumbled, playing with her fingers looking at the floor. "Liked what you saw because I certainly did," said Naruto nervously. Tamari was so red that she looked like she was going to explode and shouted, "You little perv!" and leapt at him, pinning him to the floor, shaking him up and down. Laughing, Naruto pulled Tamari down on top of him and hugged her again, saying, "There's the Tamari I know, I think I like normal Tamari better, don't you?" While grinning like an idiot. Tamari smiled and hugged him back, still on the floor, until someone said, "Ah, how lovely," in a sarcastic voice. They looked up and saw Gaara standing in the doorway. He spoke again. "Dinner started 20 minutes ago, and because you two were late, I accidentally told the other girls that you two were alone in the private hot springs bathing. I wonder how that sounded." Naruto and Tamari both blushed red again and quickly got off each other and followed Gaara to the, wherever they are eating. As soon as Naruto stepped through the green door, he was almost sent flying backwards out of it as Kankuro sent his duo puppets flying at him. "What was that for?" shouted Naruto, who had hidden behind Tamari, who was still a bit red from the incident. "Is it true that you dragged Tamari into the hot springs and did it there?" he said venomously, trapping Naruto between his two puppets. Naruto and Tamari blushed fiery red and looked quickly at Gaara, who looked emotionless as always. "Yes, I saw them with my own eyes," he said dully, but when Kankuro made to summon his giant puppets to squash Naruto, quickly added, "I was joking," in that same emotionless voice. There was silence. Kankuro dropped the scrolls he was holding while Tamari just stared with her mouth open. "You joked," said Naruto in disbelief after a while. "So," was Gaara's reply. Finally realizing what their little brother had just done, Tamari and Kankuro gasped in unison, and quickly ran off somewhere. The others had barely begun to exchange confused glances when they came back holding bottles of sake. "Hooray! Let's celebrate Gaara's first joke!" they shouted, putting the bottles on the table and putting on party hats. Then they started blowing stuff up with mini explosive tags to create some noise. After seeing everybody else stare at them in awe, Tamari coughed and said, "Let's just treat this like Halloween." The others nodded and she pulled out some party hats and balloons. Soon everyone was drinking, eating and talking loudly. After eating dinner, Kankuro decided to play a game of truth or dare. The others were all tipsy, so they just agreed to stop him shouting loudly at them on purpose to annoy them into submission. "Okay," said Kankuro in triumph. "I'll start things off," said Gaara, surprising everyone. "Tamari, truth or dare?" "Huh," said Tamari, who was wobbling in her seat. Dare," she said. "I dare you to kiss Naruto every time someone chooses truth for the remainder of the game," said Gaara after thinking for a while. "Wah," said Tamari, looking embarrassed and angry at the same time. Naruto was surprised too but couldn't say anything about it because the other girls started shouting, "What? No fair. Then don't choose truth then," said Jiraiya smugly as he had just figured out Gaara's plan. The girls huffed in annoyance and Tamari turned to Sakura, who was on her right. "Sakura, truth or dare?" Sakura thought for a moment, before saying, dare. I don't want to see the other girls ripping each other apart. Okay, said Tamari. I dare ya to. Slap Sasuke in the face. She said, smirking at the look of horror on Sakura's face and the annoyance on Sasuke's. Good one, Tem-chan, shouted Naruto in glee as he laughed his off as he saw Sakura slap Sasuke, who went through the wall because Sakura was too embarrassed and used too much power. Sasuke came through the door 3 minutes later with a look that promised payback. He shot a glare at Tamari, who was too busy blushing at Naruto's nickname for her to notice. My turn now, said Sakura. Kurenai-sensei, truth or dare? Kurenai thought for a moment. If she picked truth, Tamari would kiss Naruto, but dare would mean something nasty and embarrassing. But truth meant Tamari kissing Na. Okay, dare it is. But Naruto is affecting me too much. I don't like him that way, but I lost control a while ago. What could this mean? I remember some strange and nice smell, but Naruto doesn't know genjutsu. Sensei, said Naruto looking worried. Are you okay? He touched her forehead, checking her temperature, making the other girls minus Sakura seethe in jealousy. Yeah, I choose truth, said Kurenai, regaining some control over herself. She had felt something strange when Naruto touched her, but couldn't pinpoint what it was because the contact had been short. But she couldn't help but feel jealous when Tamari reluctantly kissed Naruto on the cheek, blushing. Okay, sensei, said Sakura, who was still a bit worried. What were you thinking about when you zoned out? Everybody looked expectantly at Kurenai as she thought on how to answer. I was wondering why I suddenly found myself more attracted to Naruto than normal recently, she said, blushing at her own words. Everybody in the room simply stared with their gauze on the floor when they heard the confession. Said Naruto, not knowing what to say or think. Okay, my turn, said Kurenai quickly and turned to Naruto. Naruto, truth or dare? Naruto regained his senses. He was cut off by Gaara, who said, Naruto, choose dare and you will be killed by my sand, in his calm, emotionless voice. Wah, no fair, Gaara, shouted Naruto, but instantly said, truth. I choose truth. When sand started approaching him, Kurenai decided to check something out and asked, are you using any methods to attract more attention of the opposite? The crowd stared intently at Naruto and waited his answer, especially the girls and Neji. Sasuke didn't give a darn about Naruto's love life but was interested too. Of course not, said Naruto, jumping up. I was scared to death when you guys did what you did. Kurenai nodded and motioned for Naruto to sit back down. Gaara, truth or dare? Said Naruto with a manic grin on his face. Truth. That's 2 kisses you owe Naruto. Tamari, said Gaara. After being kissed on both cheeks and blushing red, Naruto said, Gaara, why did you get fired? Before being bonked on the head with a pink hammer by a blushing Tamari, from kissing Naruto on the cheeks, saying, shut up, idiot. I burned my paperwork and told them that I knew they were gay. And Tamari, you told him, didn't you? Said Gaara to the shocked table. So now, payback, he said calmly. Ino, truth or dare? Ino was surprised that she was called, but said, dare, not wanting to see her crew. I mean friend being kissed by Tamari. I dare you to make out with Jiraiya. He was cut off by Ino's scream of, what? And Jiraiya's yell of, oh yeah. Come on baby. Unless Naruto kisses Ino. He was cut off again, this time by Tenten and Temari's shout of, why Naruto? And Naruto's own shout of, you shouldn't make Ino kiss just anybody. On the lips. Finished Gaara, looking at Ino, who was dumbstruck at his dare. Ino was blushing hard. She really liked Naruto, having gotten to know him a bit better after the first Sasuke retrieval mission. She had visited him one day and had ended up talking to him for hours and hours. He was a really good listener, and paid attention even to the pointless things she told him about her life, even though he was wrapped like a mummy. He even gave her some good advice. She didn't see much of him after he left hospital but couldn't stop thinking about him ever since. And 3 years later he came back a handsome guy, successfully upgrading her occasional wet dreams to a whole new level. She never got a boyfriend either because she never paid attention to other guys. Ino was brought back to Earth when she felt warm breath on her face. She saw Naruto's hesitant face in front of hers and could hear Jiraiya's shouts about betrayal and the girl's shouts about perverts but ignored them. Seeing that Naruto was about to pull back to argue more with Gaara, she quickly took her chance and leaned forward, placing her soft lips over his, kissing him tenderly. A shocked silence followed, and Ino pulled back quickly, blushing deeper by the second. My first kiss, she thought wildly. Tenten, Temari, Hinata and Shizune were burning with jealousy, as well as Jiraiya and Kankuro, while Neji, Sasuke and Kurenai just stared dumbly at Naruto, who just gaped at Ino's pretty face, blushing red. Naruto, you still need to kiss Ino, you know, stated Gaara. Making the girls yell. What? Why? I said Naruto kiss Ino, not the other way around, replied Gaara, ignoring the glares of the girls. Naruto was about to speak when Ino leaned in and kissed him again, this time licking his lips shyly before retreating, her face turning extremely red at her own daring. Quote. You know, Naruto still has to kiss Ino, you know, stated Gaara after a minute of silence in the room. Too stunned to speak, Naruto just leaned towards Ino and kissed her gently on the lips before retreating back into his seat quickly. Good, said Gaara, either not noticing the weird atmosphere or completely ignoring it. Ino, your turn. Ino didn't respond, staring at Naruto with misted eyes. Naruto, red in the face and was staring back at Ino, an embarrassed silence filling between them while the others just watched shocked. Thinking that they would be better off unconscious, Gaara took out the pink hammer and knocked both of the blondes out. The silent spell seemed to break and Tenten managed to say, what the hell was that about? The others nodded and Jiraiya said, the start of a wonderful love story full of fluff and romantic poems. What the hell? I actually said that. Let me correct my mistake. It is the start of a wonderful relationship of Essen. Gaara chucked the pink hammer at him and knocked him out. Since Naruto was out cold on top of Ino, who showed no signs of being able to take her turn, the others decided to stop playing the game and get drunk to try to forget about this incident. Sasuke mumbled something about payback next time before starting downing bottles of sake. Soon everyone apart from Gaara were asleep with bottles of sake around them. Gaara stood up and looked around, making sure they were all asleep. After double checking, he retrieved 4 video cameras from different angles of the rooms. Smirking, he switched one on. He watched in amusement as awoken and now drunk Jiraiya argued with an equally drunk Sasuke about woman while a sloppy Sakura hung on to Sasuke's every word, taking notes on a piece of crumpled paper with a chopstick, though no one would recognize what the scribbling meant anyway because after a while Sakura knocked over some sake on the sheet and ruined the marks on it. Tenten and Shizune were drunkenly singing a song about ice cream while Hinata was comforting a sobbing Neji, who apparently was letting his heart out. He was slurring out stuff like, "Si, sob, sshee lipes el larutu, sob aandd docent, sob, lipe we my marie." He burst into loud tears again and buried his face in his arms, Hinata trying to comfort him even though she didn't understand a thing he said. Gaara switched off the video camera and put them away. After a while, Naruto stirred and sat up clumsily. Naruto looked at Gaara, who was drinking some water and asked, "Hey Gaara, you know where I am sleeping?" Gaara nodded and said, "You are staying in Temari's room because she said she wanted to catch up with some things." "Okay, might as well take her back too," said Naruto and he dragged Temari gently back to her room. He laid her in her futon and was about to sleep against the wall when Temari, in her sleep, grabbed onto Naruto and pulled him down next to her. Naruto tried to pry Temari off him but failed. Sighing in defeat, he lay down next to her, not on the futon but next to it, and closed his eyes. A few minutes later he thought he felt Temari get up but slept on, not knowing that Temari had snuggled up next to him and had her arm around him, pulling him closer to her, breathing in large amounts of the scent coming from Naruto. Naruto slept peacefully, but Kyuubi was sniggering behind the cage bars. Inside Naruto's mind, looks like it's working. A small boost makes 5 girls lose control and chase him here. Animal magnetism is a strong force indeed. This is going to be fun later on. I wonder if I should drop this big demon facade. Scaring the shit out of him every time he pisses me off is getting boring now he is 15. Yeah, maybe when he next visits me I'll tell him I'm a she. Kyuubi closed her eyes for a moment and the image of a large red fox disappeared. A girl with long red hair and 9 tails coming out of her back lay in the cage instead. Maybe I'll tell him that I'm perverted as well. The female demon, whatever you want to call her, created a bed with her thoughts and laid down in it, happy to be in someone's mind for once because you can get whatever you want just by imagining it. In Temari's room, Temari was currently having very a nice dream, filled with lots and lots of Naruto and herself alone together. They were having lots of fun together, doing all sorts of typical romance activities. Then suddenly Naruto suddenly pinned her against the apple tree they were drawing pictures themselves on earlier. I want you, whispered Naruto in her ear seductively as he slipped his hand under the light blue skirt she was wearing. Please, I want more, Temari moaned out and gasped at the sensation she felt when he complied. She started ripping Naruto's clothes off and was about to remove his shirt when she felt something tugging at her hair. Turning her head, the background suddenly switched to a dark Anjesti street. She saw Naruto walking down it, arms wrapped around 2 girls' waists while a few more trailed behind and next to him. She tried to call out at him to come back, but got no response. She started dashing in his direction, but then something tugged at her hair again, and she turned around again and saw to her horror, Naruto being tied up to a wooden cross by Kankuro, who was armed with loads of spears and was laughing like a maniac. Now if Temari paid attention, she would have noticed the creepy background music and the countless stakes and skeletons all over the place, but something tugged on her hair again, and she turned around, and suddenly woke up. To see Naruto sucking cutely on a stray strand of her blonde hair in his sleep. Temari smiled and blushed at the same time at seeing his adorable face this close. Naruto looked so peaceful, laying next to her while his body moved gently as he breathed in and out repeatedly. She shifted her body and noted that she was a bit wet somewhere below the waist, obviously a product her dream. Feeling the need to go to the shower, she started to think of a way to wake Naruto up and make him join her. But before she could get a decent idea, Naruto moaned and turned over in his sleep, letting go of the strand of stray hair in his mouth. Temari was about to get up and go have a nice long shower when she saw a blinking red light in the corner of her eye. She looked at it and saw a camera video was perched on a small stool in front of her and Naruto in an angle that would record all movements of both of them from head to toe. After a full minute of staring at it dumbly, realization hit Temari. And everyone in the facility was woken with a furious yell of Gaara. Temari immediately launched herself at the offending electronic device and grabbed it, ignoring a sleepy Naruto who had woken up from her yell and asked, "What's up?" Naruto watched in confusion as his fellow blonde started pounding a video camera to the ground with her fist, her face red with fury and embarrassment. Naruto was quite good at reading expressions, but recently everybody seemed to act strangely, which confused him greatly. He heard quick footsteps approaching and turned in time to see Kankuro burst through the door. Naruto opened his mouth to say, "Good morning," but was suddenly grabbed by the puppet user and was pulled up by the front of his shirt. "What did you do to my sis?" snarled Kankuro menacingly at a confused and shocked Naruto. He turned to Temari and said, "You could have called me instead, my room is much closer to yours than Gaara's," before turning back to a now fully woken Naruto who shouted, "I didn't do anything to her, you friggin' idiot. For God's sake, can't you see that she's pounding a video camera and not me?" Blinking, Kankuro turned back to Temari, who was indeed still pounding the video camera to dust. But somehow turned even more furious and started shacking Naruto back and forth. "You bastard. You even taped it as you violated her. I'm going to skin you alive, feed your brain to dogs and then nail the rest of you at the village gates. He roared and was about to proceed with his plan when Gaara walked in calmly, saying, Kankuro, let him go. Kankuro glared at Naruto for a few seconds, before letting go of him reluctantly. Gaara looked at Temari, who was still destroying the video camera. Temari, that camera has no memory card in it. Temari looked up surprised, wondering when her siblings had come in. You mean the thing didn't film me or anything? She asked, flushing red. No, it didn't, said Gaara, and Temari sighed in relief. Gaara smirked and pointed at her table. But that one did, he said, making Temari snap her head to that direction. Sure enough, another video camera was sitting innocently on the table, a red light blinking in a regular pattern, meaning. Temari gasped in horror, face turning bright red. No, she cried and launched herself at the camera, but her hand grasped thin air when some sand lifted the camera off the table and floated to Gaara, who took it and said, "See you on YouTube," before vanishing with his sand to a private room to upload all the new stuff he had just gotten. Kankuro left the room shortly afterwards, muttering something about keeping an eye on Naruto and closing the door while Naruto stared dumbly at Temari, not understanding what had just happened. Temari, he said uncertainly as Temari just sat there, staring straight ahead. When he got no answer, he walked over to her and grabbed her by the arms, shaking her gently. You okay? He asked, seeing Temari flop down on her chair and stare at the door. When he received no answer a second time, he thought of what to do. He remembered Gaara saying something about YouTube, but he didn't know what it was. Maybe I'll go check what YouTube is, muttered Naruto as he turned to leave the room. But the words, YouTube, had caught Temari's ears and she immediately sprang onto Naruto, pinning him to the floor. Wah, what are you? If you ever go on YouTube, I'll personally destroy every ramen stand in the whole fire country, said Temari threateningly. But then she realized what position they were in and squeaked, jumping off him at once and blushing furiously. Naruto sat back up, worry evident on his face. Are you feeling alright, Temari? One second you're as aggressive as Sakura-chan, the next you're like Hinata. Did someone put something funky in your system? Temari blushed, and muttered, I'm okay, and nobody put something funky into my system. Wish you would though, she thought, and her blush deepened. Naruto noticed this and said, You're red, Temari, do you have a fever or something? Let me check for you. Leaning over, he brushed some locks of hair from Temari's face and placed his forehead against hers, something he saw nurses do in those crappy TV shows he saw once at Kiba's place. Temari's heart literally skipped a beat when she felt Naruto's forehead touch hers and she almost fainted of shock. She didn't know if she should feel relieved or disappointed when Naruto pulled away, saying, Your temperature seems normal, but you should take a shower and brush your teeth cause you smell like sake. Nodding stupidly, Temari let herself be pulled up and pushed through the door to the bathroom connected to her room, Naruto closing the door behind her. She walked over to the shower and stripped, dumping the dirty clothing all over the place. Walking into her shower, she switched on the water and sighed in pleasure when hot water rained down upon her. Removing her hair ties, she washed her hair and finished her shower after about 15 minutes. She walked to the sink and grabbed her toothbrush, brushing her teeth. Feeling refreshed, and completely forgetting that Naruto was in her room, Temari opened her bathroom door and walked back into her room wearing nothing. Finally, you took Ag. Naruto stopped mid-sentence when he saw that Temari was completely, his mouth hung open in shock. Temari just stood there, realizing that she was standing fully in front of Naruto, who was staring at her in shock. After half a minute of shocked silence, Naruto got his voice back and started freaking out and shouted. For God's sake, put something on Temari. Clamping his eyes shut and turning around. That ticked Temari off and she stomped forward, not caring that she was in front of Naruto. She grabbed the offending blonde by the shoulders, spinning him around so he faced her and pinning him to the ground. Are you saying that my body is so ugly that you can't stand looking at it for more than 30 seconds without your eyes burning? Huh, she shouted, pulling Naruto up and pinning him down again. Naruto tried to escape with the good old replacement jutsu, but Temari grabbed his hands and pulled them apart, saying, "Oh no, you don't, mister. You aren't going anywhere until you properly appreciate my body." Naruto flushed even redder than he already was and replied, "Do you know what you're saying sounds like?" With his eyes still shut tight. Blinking in confusion, Temari stopped for a moment to think about what she said, looking up at the ceiling in thought. A moment later, she realized exactly how that had sounded and flushed scarlet, immediately bounding off Naruto and diving into her futon, wrapping herself in her blanket. An awkward silence fell between the two blondes as they just sat there, blushing madly. After about 10 minutes of silence, they heard Kankuro calling everyone for breakfast and Naruto said, we should go down and eat. I'll wait outside while you change," and walked out of her room, closing the door for her. Slowly, Temari got up and went to her closet. After staring dumbly at the contents for a moment, she just grabbed a random set of clothing and put them on. After tying her hair in her usual way, she opened her door and proceeded to breakfast with Naruto, who was still a bit red in the face. Breakfast table. Everybody's attention was focused on Temari and Naruto when they entered. Kankuro had obviously been ranting about Naruto violating Temari and Shizune. Tenten and Hinata were not so secretly glaring jealously at the female blonde, while likewise Neji and Sasuke just glared at Naruto for their own reasons, while Jiraiya mumbled a lucky prick at the male blonde. "Let's eat," said Gaara, who had just arrived and sat down at the table. He picked up his knife and fork and started eating the stuff on his plate, completely ignoring the tense atmosphere around him. Shooting a few last glares at the blondes at the table, the boys and girls started on their own food. Even though Naruto was happily oblivious to the whole situation, he couldn't help but notice how the two teens across him were savagely stabbing their sausages over and over again until the food were completely mutilated before dipping the poor food into some ketchup, bringing the abused food up to their mouths and chomping on them with so much force that Naruto could hear the dull clucking sounds of teeth banging into teeth. The girls were similar, except they were grinding their eggs with their teeth, making Naruto shiver and wonder what was up. He then glanced at Ino, who was staring at her plate, poking at her food but not eating much. He wondered what was bothering her and after a while remembered their little kissing incident last night. He blushed a little as he recalled how soft her lips had felt, and how he almost let out a moan of pleasure when her tongue traced his mouth shyly. "She's a really good kisser, isn't she?" said a faint feminine voice. "Yeah," thought Naruto, staring at Ino's soft lips dazedly. "You're wondering if she is soft everywhere else," the voice whispered in his ear. "Yeah," thought Naruto as he watched Ino open her mouth to elegantly eat a piece of sausage. "You want to touch her?" the voice whispered seductively. "Yeah," thought Naruto, nodding slightly as Ino brushed a few stray hairs from her face after taking a sip of her orange juice. "Feel her?" the voice continued. "Yeah," thought Naruto, nodding again. "Her?" the voice finished smirking. "Yeah, wait, who the hell is in my head?" thought Naruto, turning red as he realized he had just admitted those things to a female voice in his head. "The Queen of S and Ming and the greatest female perverted demon of the world," replied the voice. Kyuubi. That you?" Naruto thought uncertainly. "Duh. Who else could talk in your head without going crazy with your stupidly thoughts?" said Kyuubi. "But why do you sound like a girl?" Naruto thought curiously, wondering if it was some kind of sick joke. "'Cause I am one, you dumb," came the reply. "What the hell?" was all Naruto thought. "What? Got a problem with me not having a?" said the demon fox, sounding annoyed. "Sorta," replied Naruto truthfully. "Just accept it before I embarrass you right now in public," Kyuubi said. "But," whined Naruto. "No buts, or I'll make you pounce on Ino right now and make the dreams you had last night become reality," said the Kyuubi sternly and wickedly at the same time. "Huh. Isn't that a good thing? Wait. I mean, it's not good. I wasn't planning to, but since you want it so much, I'll make the first move for you right here, cackled the female fox. No, don't you dare make me rape Ino in front of everybody. Naruto yelled in his mind. Maybe she wants it too, you know, said Kyuubi casually. No, not in public, yelled Naruto desperately in his mind, as he knew perfectly well that Kyuubi really did have the power to make him lose control and jump onto Ino. In private then, suggested Kyuubi. No, even if you see this, said Kyuubi as she flashed an image of an Ino with her clothes half ripped off, laying in a large bed staring lustfully at him. No. Stop it. Naruto yelled aloud and banged his head on the table repeatedly as Kyuubi sent image after image of Ino in all sorts of perverted poses, the fox's cackling ringing in the background. Everybody at the table stopped eating to stare at Naruto as he continued to bang his head hard against the table, denting the steel before Gaara's sand wrapped around the furniture, abusing Blonde and pulling him away from the poor piece of metal on 4 legs. Naruto, we're leaving soon, so stop destroying the few brain cells you happen to have in that thick skull of yours, said Gaara sternly. Sasuke, Neji and Kankuro snorted with satisfaction when they saw Naruto cross-eyed and a slightly bruised forehead. Naruto then blacked out when a fist of sand hit him hard on the back of the head. Okay, since everybody's eaten their breakfast, let's get those scrolls and head back to Konoha, shall we? Said Jiraiya cheerfully, wanting to get back quickly so he could do some more research. Gaara nodded and motioned for the others to follow him, dumping Naruto on the floor. The Konoha kunoichis, apart from Kurenai, Sakura and Ino, the first two had enough sense while Ino was too embarrassed to even look at him, started fussing over him. Tenten and Hinata were following instructions from a frantic Shizune who was checking his heartbeat, temperature, blood pressure and all sorts of stuff, while the males just huffed and followed Gaara through the door to the room where the scrolls were stored. Kurenai and Sakura watched dumbly as Shizune pulled out a scroll and summoned an electric thingy doctors use that zaps patients back to life. Ino, who saw her comrade still breathing normally, stepped in quickly before he was zapped to death by a hysteric medic Nin. Shizune-san, Naruto is okay, just a bit dizzy or something. So you really don't have to electrify him, you know, she said, putting her hand on Shizune's arm that held the zapping thingy. But he's all limp and just lying there, cried Shizune, trying to get to Naruto, but then Kurenai also stepped in. Shizune, get a grip on yourself. Naruto is fine, so put that dangerous machine away, she said, putting her hands on her hips. And you too, get out of those ridiculous costumes right now, she said, raising her eyebrows at Tenten and Hinata, who were wearing white nurse outfits topped with the hats with red crosses on them. Sakura was getting a headache. Her friends were all acting weird and she was going to snap soon if this kind of stuff didn't stop. Temari, who had went to the restroom a while ago, walked back in to see her precious Naruto sprawled on the floor. Needless to say, she freaked out. Oh my god. Naruto, are you alright? She shrieked and flung herself forward, landing on her knees as she grabbed Naruto by the collar, shaking him back and forth. Sighing in defeat, Sakura took the matter into her own hands and picked up the pink hammer from a corner of the room. A series of bonking noises sounded and Tenten, Hinata, Shizune and Temari were out cold with lumps on their heads. She sighed again, walked over and knelt over Naruto, performing a few quick hand seals. Her hands glowed green and she placed them over Naruto's forehead. A few seconds later, Naruto woke up muttering stuff about pale blonde hair and delicious creamy skin. Ino heard this and flushed red, looking away from Naruto and wondering if he was thinking about her. Sakura wasn't pleased and bonked him on the head with her fist, saying, "Get your mind out of the gutter and help me drag the girls to the scroll room now." So they went off to the scroll room to meet up with the rest of the guys, and the poor abused steel table was forgotten. Somewhere in a dark, evil-looking room, Orochimaru glared impatiently at Kabuto as the silver-haired medic took out a piece of cardboard with letters of different sizes stamped on it. "Are we done yet?" he said, glaring at his subordinate who was setting the board on a stand a few meters away from him. Just this test left Orochimaru-sama, said Kabuto, pushing up his glasses. Orochimaru-sama, I want you to read out the letters starting from the smallest ones from the bottom, he said, taking out a metal rod and pointing at a line of letters at the bottom of the board. What kind of useless test is this? Snarled the snake Sanin as he tried to make out the letters on the offending board. I, L, O, V, E, S, A, S, U, K, and E, he said, making Kabuto frown. Okay, Orochimaru-sama. The next line, Kabuto said, jabbing at the line of letters above the first line. Orochimaru frowned in concentration as he tried to make out the letters. Let's see, P, E, D, O, P, H, I, L, and E, he said uncertainly as Kabuto took notes on a clipboard with a frown on his face. Okay, Orochimaru-sama, the next line please, said Kabuto with a serious look on his face. I, A, M, G, A, and Y, said Orochimaru, getting irritated. Kabuto seemed to be very concerned about something when he said, the last line please, Orochimaru-sama. A, N, A, and L. The Sanin said, annoyed at something. Kabuto put down his clipboard, looking at his master solemnly. Orochimaru-sama, he started, and a dead silence trailed for a few seconds. You need glasses immediately. Quote. A large portion of the rice country was suddenly destroyed when an enormous purple snake appeared out of nowhere and started destroying everything in sight. If one would listen closely, they would hear somebody screaming, I don't need $King glasses. Gaara was staring at the empty space inside the huge safe in the scroll room while everybody else, including the now conscious girls, were staring at Gaara behind him. It's not there, said Sasuke dully. Way to go, Sasuke. Thanks for pointing that out. I don't think we would have noticed that by ourselves, said Naruto in mock surprise. Sasuke just nodded and looked back at Gaara, who was still just staring blankly at the safe. So what do we do, Gaara? Asked Temari, looking a bit worried. Gaara finally looked up and turned at the others. The mission will proceed as planned. Meet me at the gate of the village 2 hours later. I will arrive after I retrieve the true documents from the office, he said as he started gathering sand to transport to the office, but Sakura stopped him, saying, What do you mean true documents? The scrolls are all gone from this safe. The others nodded and looked intently at the former mindless killing machine as he smirked a little. The thieves did manage to steal the secret scrolls in this small safe. Everybody's sweat dropped at the word small, but those were merely scrolls containing Kankuro's magazines and his Barbie dolls, said Gaara calmly before disappearing to get the real stuff. Everybody in the room stared at Kankuro in shock for a moment before looking away quickly and slowly edging away from him. Kankuro instantly became pissed. What's wrong with me having mags and dolls? He said, stomping his feet, eyebrows twitching. The others looked at each other's for a moment before saying in unison, nothing at all, in a completely unconvincing way. Kankuro seemed to have steam pouring out of his ears in anger. If you have a problem, say it in my face, said the puppet user in a deadly calm voice. Naruto decided to say the stuff on everybody's mind. You have Barbie dolls, he said as a shocked kind of voice. So, said the previous proud owner of 1,000 sets of Barbie dolls. Nothing, said Naruto uncertainly. The others inched even further away from him until a loud angry voice was heard from behind them. What's wrong with you people? Barbie dolls are extremely cool and fun, yet you see them as if they are slime. I can't stand it, shouted the figure in bandages and funky clothing passionately. Everyone gasped in complete horror as they realized what the outburst from the guy meant. Hyuga Neji was a fan of Barbie dolls, along with Puppet Freak. This is the end of the world, said Sakura, looking at Tenten, who was trying to comfort poor Hinata, who was horror-struck at the newfound knowledge. The others nodded slowly and quickly retreated from the room, leaving Kankuro and Neji to hoist the funeral of those scary Barbie dolls. At the gates of Suna, After Gaara returned with the real scrolls and the funeral of Kankuro's obsession, everyone set off back to Konoha for some well-deserved pay and other things. Naruto couldn't wait to stuff his face with ramen, Sasuke couldn't wait to rehearse his newest revenge speech. Sakura couldn't wait to stalk Sasuke all over the place, Ino couldn't wait to relieve some tension. Tenten couldn't wait to polish her weapons, Tamari couldn't wait to polish her fan. Hinata couldn't wait to read the new book she got from a certain someone, Neji couldn't wait to show Kankuro his collection. Kurenai and Shizune couldn't wait to soak in the hot springs, and Jiraiya couldn't wait to peek on them. Gaara couldn't wait to meet Tsunade about an experiment and Kankuro couldn't wait to see Neji's collection. Surprisingly, they arrived at the north gate of Konoha with no hormone-crazed females chasing Naruto around. They all went separate ways and Naruto almost literally flew to Ichiraku ramen stand. When arrived at the stand, he looked like a skeleton and was propped on a stick. Old man, ramen, and now please. Rolling his eyes, Ichiraku started making the usual for the blonde ramen fiend. A few minutes later, Naruto was happily slurping down his ramen while chatting happily about the missions he would like to take later. I can't wait to get a mission back to the Wave Country so I can see Inari again. Then I want to see Sasama-chan again in Rice Country. Then, Naruto stopped talking for a moment to swallow all the soup in his bowl. He placed the bowl on the neatly stacked pile next to him and suddenly remembered something. Old man, where's Ayame Nichan? He asked puzzled because he can't see her anywhere in the stand. Ah, said the ramen chief. She's at the back cleaning the storage room. You can help her if you want, the meal's on the house today. Okay, I don't have anything to do now anyway, said Naruto as he hopped off his stool and headed inside the stand. He had a nagging feeling that he had forgotten something but ignored it. He entered the storage room to find Ayame with her back to him stacking some boxes of ingredients on a corner. He then heard Kyuubi mutter, "Time for some action," and was about to ask what that meant when he felt something spreading out of him into the surrounding. Ayame instantly looked up and turned around, looking a bit surprised to see Naruto standing in front of her. She lifted a hand to pinch her face, missing it by several inches. I'm dreaming again, better make full use of it, Naruto heard her mutter to herself as she slowly walked towards him with a dreamy look in her eyes. Ayame Nichan, he said uncertainly and backed away slowly feeling uncomfortable about something. He started freaking out when Ayame started taking her clothes off. Come on Naruto-kun, she said lustfully as she pulled her shirt off, revealing a lacy black bra. Naruto instantly bolted back to the door but Ayame launched herself at him tackling him to the ground. The poor demon vessel tried desperately to free himself but the ramen girl was sitting on his legs while ripping off his orange jacket. Kyuubi help! Naruto yelled mentally as he tried to keep Ayame's hands from ripping his black undershirt apart. The only response he got was manic laughter. Booahahaha. Hell no. You owe me a favor from that other time, so I command you to get laid right here and now. Naruto cursed the perverted demon fox in his head and resorted to jutsu. Kage Bushin no Jutsu, cried Naruto as he formed a cross-hand seal. 5 more Narutos appeared and pulled Ayame away. Oh, you want to have an orgy? You're so thoughtful Naruto-kun. The girl cried as she pinned a copy of Naruto to the wall and started making out with it. Feeling horrified, the real Naruto got up and dashed through the storage room door. After saying a hurried goodbye to the old man Ichiraku, Naruto fled in a random direction. After recognizing the area, he ran all the way to his apartment, jumped in through the open window and hid under the blankets of his bed. After calming down a bit, he sat up and went into a meditative stance ready to start yelling at the fox demon. After a while, he realized that the fox wasn't responding to his insults. Curious, he descended to the next level of meditation and entered the subconscious of his mind. After locating Kyuubi's cage, he peeked through the bars to see no fox inside. Instead, he found a large king-sized bed with a figure sitting on it. Curious, He started slipping past the bars but lost his concentration and went back to the conscious world because of a faint scream. Eyes snapping open, Naruto got up and stuck his head out of the window to listen carefully. Indeed, loud screams of pleasure were heard coming from the direction of the academy and Ichiraku's. The female voice was familiar but he couldn't recognize it at the moment. In the village, the villagers were all quite shocked at the screams, the woman covering their children's ears while the men drooled pervertedly and got nosebleeds. Near the hot springs, Jiraiya too heard the noise and looked up from his telescope. He giggled pervertedly when he caught some phrases that hinted what activities were going on. Down in the hot springs below the tree Jiraiya resided in, Anko, Shizune and Kurenai heard the screams too. "What's that?" asked Kurenai curiously as she played with the towel tightly wrapped around her body. The noise and the hot water were making her feel very hot and her cheeks were flushed because of the heat. Anko grinned. It was a good idea to come to the hot springs with these two, she thought. She leaned over to Kurenai and whispered in a seductive voice. "Ah, Nai-chan's feeling excited right now, let's have some fun together." Anko crawled over and placed her arms around Kurenai's waist. Kurenai made no effort to stop her and took hold of the back of Anko's head. Shizune inched away from the two knowing what would happen next. Back up the tree, Jiraiya was furiously taking notes as he watched the steamy make-out session between the two junins. When Anko pulled Kurenai's towel half off, Jiraiya saw too much and spouted a nosebleed. "Shit," muttered Jiraiya as he tried to stem the flow of crimson liquid with his sleeve, but a small amount dripped down into the spring, hitting the water near the only two females in the spring, making them stop and look up to see the perverted hermit covering his nose with his sleeve. "Pervert!" They screamed in fury and splashed to their feet. Their loose towels fell down and revealed the now uncovered anatomy. Jiraiya's eyes widened and he was propelled away by the massive stream of blood that burst violently from his nose. He flew through Konoha and landed in a heap just outside the gates of the village. Anko and Kurenai sat back down in the spring but were very pissed. "Great, the mood is totally ruined now," said Anko. Sighing, Kurenai nodded and got up again, proceeding to the changing room. Anko followed, thinking about ways to find and torture the white-haired pervert. Shizune looked curiously at the sky for a moment, wondering if Naruto would want to peek at her if she were at hot springs. Blushing at her own perverted thoughts, the medic nin quickly got up and followed her friends to the changing rooms. At the Hyuga Manor, Hinata was in her room sitting on her futon. Her eyes were glued to the pages of a certain book authored by the newly dubbed Human Rocket. With every word she read, her face became redder and redder, steam eventually pouring out of her ears. The shy girl immediately put down the book and clutched her face in embarrassment. "It's so naughty. I can't be thinking of doing this with Naruto-kun," she thought as her face reddened even further as she pictured Naruto and her alone in a hospital room, Naruto suddenly pouncing on her and "Bad Hinata. Naughty Hinata." She mentally scolded herself for thinking about that kind of stuff. She just sat there for a moment before picking up the book and opening it again. She was soon so absorbed in the book that she didn't hear the rather loud speech about Barbie dolls from Neji, who had captured Kiba and Shino and was ranting about the coolness of his dolls while Kankuro dressed the dolls up in different outfits. "I wonder if the guys who took my dolls were fans," the puppet user wondered aloud while looking at Kiba, who had white foam coming out of his mouth. Shino was holding his ground, but Neji's endless ranting was making him lose his sanity. Shikamaru, who had hid well enough, prayed that Kiba and Shino would survive such a cruel trial of fate. Halfway through the prayer, he realized how troublesome it would be and stopped to look up at the clouds. Seeing a summoning bird, he sighed and headed towards the Hokage's office. He passed Ino's place on the way, and heard loud moans coming through the window of her room. Curious about what she was doing, he jumped onto the balcony of her room and peeked through the sky-blue curtains. Ino lay on her bed, the thin sheets covering her obviously body. Shikamaru's eyes widened and saliva caught in his throat as he realized what the beautiful blonde girl was doing. He immediately looked away and jumped off the balcony, wanting to stick his head onto a bucket of ice. He passed Gaara and Temari on his way to the local ice cream stand, but didn't pay attention to their greeting and stuck his head into the ice cart of the stand. He tried to stop thinking about perverted stuff but couldn't stop himself from thinking about how the thin sheets barely covered Ino's wonderfully curved body. The image proved to be too much for him to handle and he passed out with a massive nosebleed. Gaara walked to Shikamaru and poured some sake into the ice cart with Shikamaru's head stuck in it, mixing the sake, blood and ice together. Mulled red anyone, said Gaara tonelessly before walking away from the out-cold Chunin. Temari giggled at the joke. The villagers concluded that today was a bad day and started walking away from the Chunin, not wanting to get bad luck. Meanwhile at the border of the fire country, Itachi and Kisame were walking down the road casually. The latter had a large scroll slung over his back. I wonder what kind of secret information is inside the scroll, said Kisame adjusting the grip on the rope that bound the scroll together so he could hold it more comfortably. Itachi glanced at him and said, "Open it if you want to know," in a bored tone. Kisame and Itachi set up camp near a river since it was getting dark. Itachi went to find some food while Kisame opened the scroll and examined it. When Itachi returned with 2 porcupines and a skunk, he saw Kisame buried under a small mountain of plastic dolls. "What the?" he started but stopped since it sounded uncool. After clearing his throat, he tried again. "What the hell are you doing with Sasori's old dolls?" he said in a toneless tone, one eyebrow raised. "I found them in the scroll we took from Suna," said Kisame, hoisting himself up and brushing the dolls off his cloak. "Whatever, burn them all and make dinner," replied Itachi, and he watched Kisame piling the dolls in a way that would enable the fire to burn them easier. After watching the fire failing to burn the stupid dolls, Itachi sighed and told Kisame to stand back. He closed his eyes for a moment, before opening again with the Manjaku Sharingan flaring. Black fire enveloped the Barbie dolls and destroyed the whole pile within the span of a few seconds. Letting the Sharingan fade back to the normal eyes, he suppressed a smirk at having finally destroyed the freaky dolls that Sasori loved to play with. "Now, make dinner," Itachi ordered as he sat down against a tree. Kisame grumbled a bit but complied. A few hours later at Naruto's place. The screams stopped. Naruto let out a sigh of relief as he no longer had to hear the fuzzy brows yelling about unyouthful noises and their attempt of drowning it out by terrible singing. He heard Kyuubi panting in his mind and asked, "What the hell were you doing the past few hours?" "You don't want to know," said the fox teasingly, still out of breath. "Oh come on, tell me," whined Naruto. The Kyuubi chucked and Naruto suddenly felt worried for some reason. "I relieved some of my stress," said the demon cheerfully, far too cheerfully to be good. "How exactly did you relieve your stress?" asked a nervous Naruto, thinking whether he really wanted to know. "Did you hear the screaming earlier?" asked Kyuubi wickedly. Naruto nodded mentally, dreading the next words. "I took control of your cage bushins," said Kyuubi shortly, giggling pervertedly, but Naruto still didn't get the meaning of it. He just sat there for a minute, letting new information sink in. The last time he made some cage bushins was when he escaped a Yame Nichan. Kyuubi said he took control over them, meaning they didn't disappear. There were screams of pleasure in the village for about 3 hours. The voice screaming was familiar. Then it all clicked in, and Naruto's eyes rolled to the back of his head as he passed out with a large nosebleed.